Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're doing something a little different.
Yeah.
We are diving into a Wikipedia page.
Right.
It's called the List of United States Crime-Related Lists.
Wow.
So this is not us like analyzing a specific criminal case
Right.
or a specific event,
I see.
but it's kind of taking a look at all of the information that we have about crime in the U.S.
Okay.
and kind of like the different ways it's organized and categorized.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's been kind of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, right off the bat, this page jumps into
Okay.
criminals and suspected criminals.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a distinction between individuals and groups.
Of course. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to sort of think about
Yeah.
this whole topic.
Right.
Because you have individuals and then you have groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that already is kind of hinting at how diverse the nature of criminal activity is.
Exactly.
You know, you've got the lone wolf kind of operating on their own. Right. And then you have these organized, groups or gangs or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call them.
And they each have their own kind of internal workings and
Exactly. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the impacts are different too.
Exactly.
Depending on, whether you're talking about an
Yeah.
individual or a group.
And I mean, under the individual section,
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Okay.
We've got Old West gunfighters,
Uh-huh.
Depression-era outlaws,
Wow.
serial killers in the United States.
It's like a who's who
Yeah.
of American criminals.
It's like a history of American crime.
Yeah. And it's almost like these figures have become part of
Yeah,
our culture.
absolutely.
Like they're almost romanticized in a way.
Absolutely.
But it also reminds us that this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, crime is not a new thing.
No, not at all.
And it's been evolving right alongside the country itself
Absolutely.
for centuries.
Yeah. And when you look at the groups, it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
You've got street gangs, mafia families, and these are groups with their own, codes of conduct, hierarchies.
Yeah, they're not just a bunch of individuals committing crimes.
Right.
This is like,
It's an entity.
yeah, it's an entity.
Yeah.
And so it brings up questions like, how have their operations and tactics changed over time?
Mm-hmm.
How do we address the challenges of organized crime?
Right.
It's like we're looking at this whole ecosystem
Yeah, a whole different ecosystem.
with different players at different levels.
Absolutely.
And it's not just focused on the criminals and the organizations.
Right.
This page also dives into the crimes themselves.
Okay.
So we've got a crimes category.
Interesting.
And it's really fascinating to see how much variety there is
Mm-hmm.
and how it's changed over time.
Right. Yeah. And it really reflects how societal shifts and technological advancements have influenced the types of crimes.
Yeah.
We've got things like train robberies, which, feel very historical.
Yeah. But then you've got mass shootings and terrorism,
Yeah.
which are very much a reality of today.
Right. And it makes you wonder what the future lists are going to look like.
I know, it's almost scary to think about.
Yeah, because technology is constantly changing.
Mhm.
Society is changing.
Yeah,
We're dealing with new challenges.
absolutely.
It's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, it is. But it's also fascinating
It is fascinating.
to see how it all evolves.
But it's not just about the big picture.
Okay.
We also see things like list of 2012 murders in the United States.
Right. So it gets really specific too.
Yeah, like really specific, like
Yeah.
down to the year.
Yeah,
And I think that's where the data gets really interesting.
it does, because then you can start to analyze trends
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah.
See how things are changing.
Spikes, declines in different types of crimes.
Exactly.
And that can be valuable for policymakers,
For sure.
for law enforcement
Yeah.
researchers.
Absolutely. It helps everyone understand the problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe even prevent
Hopefully.
future tragedies.
Right.
But of course, any discussion about crime, we have to acknowledge the victims.
Of course. Yeah.
And there's a whole category for that as well.
Right.
And I think this is really where we start to see the human cost of crime.
Absolutely. It shifts the focus from the perpetrator to the people who are affected,
Yeah.
and the lists here are really powerful.
Yeah. List of murdered American children,
Mm-hmm.
list of journalists killed in the United States.
Yeah, those are tough ones.
Yeah. It's a reminder that these are real people
They are.
and real lives,
Mm-hmm.
and families and communities.
Yeah, it's not just numbers.
Yeah. It's not just statistics.
It's people's lives.
And it really humanizes the whole issue
Absolutely.
in a way that raw numbers just can't.
I agree.
And it also makes us think about, how we support the victims of crime?
Mm-hmm.
How do we advocate for them?
Yeah, those are important questions.
How do we make sure their voices are heard?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times those questions get lost in the bigger discussions about crime and punishment.
They do.
But, while it's important to acknowledge that human cost, we also need to look at the bigger picture.
The bigger picture, yeah.
And that's where the statistics category comes in.
Okay.
So this allows us to move from the individual stories to the broader trends and patterns.
Right, because statistics help us quantify things.
Right.
Identify hot spots.
Mhm.
Track changes over time.
Yeah, and this page has a ton of statistical lists.
Oh, I bet.
Gun violence by state, homicide rate by state. We even see crime rates broken down by city size.
Wow, so you can really drill down.
Yeah, you can really get specific.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how location plays such a big role
It does.
in these statistics.
Right, because it shows that crime is not evenly distributed.
Right.
There are factors like poverty, inequality, access to resources.
Yeah, all these things play a role.
They all contribute.
Yeah, so it's not just about national trends, but understanding these local factors
Absolutely.
that are at play.
Mm-hmm.
But then that makes me wonder, what happens when we start comparing data
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
across different states or cities?
Well, you have to be careful there
No, why that?
because there can be inconsistencies
Okay.
in how the data is collected and reported.
Onsie.
Different states and cities might have different definitions of certain crimes,
Okay.
or their reporting practices might not be the same.
Right, so it's not always apples to apples.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have to be careful about that.
We do.
So while the data is valuable, we can't make sweeping generalizations.
No.
It's about understanding the context
Absolutely.
behind the numbers.
Yeah.
So we've talked about individuals,
Mm-hmm.
groups,
Yeah.
crimes, victim statistics.
That's a lot.
I know, but there's one more category.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, and it's called other.
Okay.
And it's almost like a catch-all for the unique aspects
Yeah.
of the U.S. criminal justice system.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it's like we're zooming out
Okay.
from the individual cases and looking at the bigger structures.
I see.
How crime is investigated, prosecuted,
Right.
and ultimately how we define justice.
Oh, wow.
And I think this is where things get really interesting
Okay.
because we have to confront the complexities
Hmm.
and the imperfections.
Yeah. No system is perfect.
Yeah. For example, there's the list of killings by law enforcement officers,
Okay.
which, immediately brings up this conversation about police brutality, accountability.
Yeah, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, it is, but it's a necessary conversation,
It is.
especially given everything that's happening right now.
Absolutely. We have to talk about these things.
And this list just serves as a reminder that the pursuit of justice
Yeah.
isn't always easy
It's not.
or straightforward.
No.
And then we also have the list of overturned convictions,
Okay.
which highlights the potential for error
Right.
within the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes the pursuit of justice can lead to wrongful imprisonment.
Yeah, and that's a really tough one to swallow,
It is.
because it makes you question the whole system.
It does.
You know how reliable is eyewitness testimony?
Yeah.
What about forensic evidence?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's all run by humans
Right.
who can make mistakes,
Right.
who have biases.
It's a humbling reminder that even with good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
we can still get things wrong.
Yeah.
But then in the midst of these really serious topics,
Okay.
we also have entries that kind of tap into this fascination
Yeah, okay.
with crime.
Like what?
Like the list of deaths and violence at the Cecil Hotel.
Oh, yeah, the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah.
That's a notorious one.
It is. And it's almost
Oh.
like these locations become intertwined
Right.
with the crimes.
Yeah, they take on a life of their own.
They really do.
It's eerie.
It is eerie.
Yeah.
So this other category, it's kind of a blend of these serious discussions about the criminal justice system
Mm-hmm.
and these entries that just tap into our cultural fascination
Yeah.
with crime.
It's like the whole spectrum
Yeah, it's like this whole spectrum.
of our relationship with crime.
Yeah, and so what I'm thinking is like this page really captures that,
It does.
like how we view crime, how we understand it.
Mm.
And what do you think it says about us as a society?
Well, I think it shows that we have this deep need to categorize things,
Yeah.
to document things, to try to make sense of something that can be really chaotic and unpredictable.
Right, like we're looking for patterns.
Yeah.
Explanation.
We want to understand it.
Yeah, we want to understand, we want to make sense of it.
Right?
And it's almost like we're trying to fit crime
Yeah.
into these neat little boxes.
Into categories.
Yeah, when in reality, it's just this messy,
It is.
complex phenomenon.
Absolutely.
And there's so many factors that contribute to it.
Right. And the data and the statistics are helpful. But they only tell part of the story.
They do. We can't forget about the human element.
Exactly.
Right. The individual stories,
Mm-hmm.
the social and economic forces
Mm-hmm.
that are at play.
It's all connected.
It is. And it's easy to get caught up in the numbers,
It is.
the
Yeah.
trends.
The big picture.
Yeah, the big picture.
But we can't forget about the people, the communities
Yeah.
that are affected.
And their stories deserve to be heard.
Absolutely.
But going back to the data for a minute,
Okay.
what really strikes me about this page is just how much information is on here.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in.
It's overwhelming,
Is.
and it's constantly evolving.
Well, that's the nature of data,
Yeah.
especially in the digital age.
Yeah.
There's always new information coming out, new connections being made.
Yeah.
Our understanding is constantly evolving.
So this page is really just a snapshot in time
It is.
of our current understanding of crime.
Yeah. It's a living archive.
It is.
Yeah.
But with all this information.
Where do you even begin?
That's a great question. And I think the best approach is to just be curious.
Okay.
Start with something that interests you.
Okay.
Particular type of crime,
Mhm.
a historical period, maybe even the crime statistics for your local area.
So find a starting point and then just kind of follow your curiosity.
Exactly. Let it lead you down the rabbit hole.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let it lead you down the rabbit hole.
And don't be afraid to explore different categories.
Okay.
Make connections. Draw your own conclusions.
So it's like a treasure hunt
It is.
for knowledge.
Yeah. And you never know what you might find.
Okay. So we've explored this page.
We have.
We've seen the different categories,
Yeah.
the different ways that this information is organized.
A lot of different ways.
We've talked about the implications for understanding crime,
Yeah.
and we've touched on the importance of being critical of the
Definitely.
data
Yeah.
and understanding the limitations.
Right.
But before we wrap up this part,
I have one final question for you.
right.
Given all of this,
Mm-hmm.
all this data, all these lists, all these perspectives on crime,
Yeah.
what do you think is the most important question that we should be asking ourselves as a society?
That's a good one.
I know it's a tough one.
It is, but I think I have an answer for you.
Okay.
Well, I think it all comes down to how we use this information.
Yeah.
We've got all this data, all this historical context.
Right.
How can we use it to actually make a difference?
So it's not enough to just collect the data.
No, it's not enough to just analyze it.
You have to do something with it.
Exactly. We need to act on it.
But that's a big question.
It is.
How do we actually create a safer and more just society for everyone?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that crime is not a simple problem.
Mm.
There's no easy fix.
Right.
We can't just throw money at it or lock everyone up.
So what do we do?
We have to address the root causes.
Okay.
Things like poverty, inequality, a lack of opportunity.
These are big issues.
They are, but we can't ignore them.
Right.
And at the same time, we have to make sure that our justice system is fair,
Yeah.
that it's equitable.
And focus on rehabilitation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to break the cycle of crime.
So it sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach.
We do.
We need policymakers, law enforcement, community organizations, individuals, all working together.
It's a collective responsibility.
And this Wikipedia page, it kind of shows us the way.
It does, in a way.
It highlights the trends, the challenges, the human stories.
It gives us a framework for understanding the issue.
Yeah, and it reminds us that this isn't just about numbers.
Right.
These are real people's lives.
Exactly.
We have to remember that.
We do.
So it's not just about reacting to crime after it happens.
No, we need to be proactive.
Okay.
We need to invest in prevention.
How do we do that?
Well, there are a lot of different strategies.
Okay.
We can support early childhood education,
Okay.
create job training programs, provide mental health services.
These are all great ideas.
The key is to address the underlying factors that contribute to crime.
And create a society where everyone feels safe
Exactly.
and supported.
And has the opportunity to thrive.
That's the goal.
It is a big goal.
It is.
But I think it's achievable.
I hope so.
Me too.
So for our listeners out there,
Yeah.
I encourage you to check out this Wikipedia page.
It's really interesting.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Explore the lists that grab your attention.
Yeah. See what sparks your curiosity.
Let the information guide you
And most importantly,
Yeah.
ask yourself what role you can play.
in creating a safer, more just society.
Because even small actions can make a difference.
That's a good point.
Yeah. When we all work together, we can create real change.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you.
This has been a really thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
And I want to thank you for being our guide.
It's been my pleasure.
You've really helped us navigate this complex topic.
I'm glad I could help.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.
It really is a good question to think about.
Yeah, and it's something I think we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely.
Not just in terms of crime, but in terms of any issue.
Right. Like, how can we use the information we have to create positive change?
Exactly.
And I think that's where the real challenge lies.
Yeah. It's not enough to just be aware of the problem.
Right. We have to be willing to do something about it.
So what can we do?
Well, I think it starts with education.
Okay.
We need to educate ourselves about the issues.
Yeah.
About the root causes of crime, about the impact it has on individuals and communities.
So knowledge is power.
It really is.
And then once we have that knowledge, we need to use it to advocate for change. We can support organizations that are working to address these issues.
Right. We can vote for policies that promote justice and equality.
We can volunteer our time.
Exactly.
We can donate to causes that we believe in.
Yeah, there's so many ways to get involved.
And even small actions can make a difference.
You really can.
Especially when we all work together.
It's about collective action.
Yeah, and it's about holding ourselves and each other accountable.
Absolutely.
For creating a better world.
I think that's a great message to end on.
It is, and I want to thank you again for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been a really enlightening conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hope our listeners have found it valuable as well.
Me too.
So until next time, keep diving deep.
Stay curious.
And keep asking those tough questions.